I thought we were just having a nice dinner with Blake's parents. Then he pulled out a prenup, already printed, already signed by him. No warning, just paperwork waiting for my signature. That was the moment I realized the wedding wasn't the start of our future. It was the beginning of a negotiation. "You don't have to read it now," Blake said, folding his cloth napkin like we weren't sitting in the middle of a steakhouse. But he had already pushed the folder across the table toward me. His mom, Janelle, sat beside him with that tight smile she always wore, like everything she did was rehearsed for a family Christmas card. Doug, his dad, avoided my eyes completely and sipped his scotch like he wished he were anywhere else. I didn't touch the folder. Instead, I looked at Blake. "What is this?" He leaned back like it was no big deal. "Just something simple. A prenup. Standard stuff. My lawyer drew it up last week. I figured it'd be easier to go over it now instead of waiting until closer to the wedding." I stared at him. "You never even mentioned wanting a prenup." "I didn't think it would be a big deal," he said with a casual shrug. "It's just smart. My family has assets, you know that." I blinked. "You mean your assets? Because I have some too. Not as much, sure, but I'm not walking into this empty-handed." Janelle placed her hand on Blake's arm like I was overreacting. "Mia, it's not personal. We just have to think long-term. It protects everyone. That's all." My heart was pounding, but I managed a polite smile. I didn't want to make a scene, especially in front of his parents, so I nodded and slipped the folder into my purse. "I'll read it at home," I said, even though I already knew I wouldn't like what was in it. Blake and I had been together for 4 years. We met at a conference in Vancouver. He was doing consulting for a startup, and I was presenting on dental hygiene access for low-income communities. Romantic, I know. He was sharp, confident, polished. The kind of man who always knew what to say and when to say it. At first, that was comforting. After my last relationship, which ended with me covering rent for a guy who forgot his wallet, for 6 months straight, Blake felt like a step up. He made real money, dressed like he had it, and seemed to respect the fact that I wasn't just some pushover, or so I thought. That night, I read the prenup at the kitchen table. Carmen, my older sister, came over after her shift just as I was finishing it. She brought wine. I brought the legal-sized headache. "This is garbage," she said after reading the first 2 pages. "Mia, this isn't a prenup. This is a trap." I looked at her. "You think I'm overreacting?" "No, I think you're underreacting. This thing says if you two divorce, everything in his name stays his, but anything you own jointly reverts to him, even if you paid for it." I flipped to the page she was pointing at. Sure enough, clause after clause locking me out of anything we'd build together. Retirement, real estate, savings, even furniture. The wording was so lopsided it felt like a joke, a cold, lawyer-approved joke. Carmen put the papers down and looked at me hard. "You want my advice?" "I always want your advice." "Then make your own prenup, one that protects you. And don't you sign a damn thing until he does too." It took a few days for the shock to wear off. I told Blake I needed time to review it with someone I trusted. He said, "Of course," but his tone was flat, like I was being difficult for wanting a second opinion. I didn't care. Carmen helped me connect with a legal friend of hers, and we spent 2 weeks drafting my version. It was fair, reasonable. It protected the condo I inherited from our aunt and the modest investments I'd built up. It didn't try to take from him. It just drew a line where his family money ended and my life began. And when I presented it to him, folded neatly in a blue folder just like his, he didn't even open it. "You're joking," Blake said. "No," I replied, keeping my voice even. "This is my version of fair." He crossed his arms. "You seriously think we're equals in this?" That stung more than I expected. "What does that mean?" Blake scoffed. "It means you make, what, $70 a year, and you're comparing that to the Spencer family trust?" "I'm not comparing it," I said, standing my ground. "I'm protecting it. The same way you are." We didn't talk for the rest of the night. He slept in the guest room. I didn't cry, but I did stay awake. Because in that moment, I realized something that shook me. Blake didn't want a partnership. He wanted a merger where he owned controlling shares. Janelle called me 2 days later. Friendly voice. Too friendly. "I heard things got tense after dinner," she said with a sympathetic sigh. "You know how Blake can get when he feels cornered." "I didn't corner him," I said. I gave him a document, just like he gave me. There was a pause. Sweetheart, she said, and I hated that word coming from her. Marriage is about compromise, but it's also about understanding roles. Blake is the provider. You bring other strengths. Like what? Emotional support? A good smile? I snapped. I'm just saying, don't ruin a good thing over pride. You'll be very comfortable as his wife. Isn't that the goal? I ended the call without answering. Because no, it wasn't. Blake finally opened the folder a week later. He was quiet the whole time he read it. No eye rolls, no comments, just silence. When he finished, he set it on the table. Who helped you write this? Does it matter? Was it your sister? Yes, I said honestly. And a lawyer. A good one. He stood up. Good to know where your head is. And then he left the apartment. That's how we started sleeping apart more than together. He still texted, still came home, still talked about wedding details, but something had cracked between us. And I couldn't tell if we were rebuilding or just pretending not to notice the rubble under our feet. He still came home at night, but late. Sometimes I'd hear him walking around the kitchen or showering in the guest bathroom. He stopped calling me babe. He stopped asking if I needed anything from the store. And for the first time in our relationship, it felt like I was sharing an apartment with a tenant, not a fiancé. The silence wasn't loud. It was sharp, cold, calculated. And I started to wonder if it had always been that way, and I just hadn't noticed. Carmen came over again that Saturday with Thai takeout and a face that said she'd been waiting for my call. Well, she asked, sitting cross-legged on my couch. What did Blake say about the prenup? I gave her the short version. She leaned back, scowling. Of course, it's fine when he sets the terms, but if you stand up for yourself, it's a betrayal. I don't even know what to say to him. I admitted, I feel like I've already said everything that matters. Carmen handed me a container of Pad CU. You don't need to say anything. If he wants a prenup, fine. But he doesn't get to shame you for wanting one too. I don't think it's just about the prenup anymore, I said. It feels bigger than that. Carmen nodded. It always is. Sunday afternoon, I walked into the kitchen and found Blake reading a spreadsheet at the dining table. I didn't plan to start a fight, but I couldn't keep tiptoeing. So, are we going to talk about it? He didn't look up. About what? I sat down across from him. About how you're treating me. He finally met my eyes. I'm not treating you anyway. You're icing me out. I needed space, he said. You blindsided me, Mia. You blindsided me first. That prenup I gave you? That's standard. Mine protects generational assets. Yours is just spiteful. I felt the heat rising in my chest. It's not spiteful, I said. It's protective. And if that makes you uncomfortable, maybe ask yourself why. He stood up, grabbing his laptop. I don't have time for this right now. And just like that, the conversation ended. A week later, Blake's mom invited us to dinner at their place. I didn't want to go. Carmen said I shouldn't. My gut said I shouldn't. But I went anyway, because I wanted to see if the problem was Blake or if it went deeper than that. The Spencers lived in a massive house in the west end of Calgary. One of those houses with matching stone pillars, manicured hedges, and a driveway that curves like it's being filmed for a car commercial. Janelle opened the door before we even rang the bell. Mia, she said like nothing was wrong. Come in, come in. Blake followed me in without a word. Doug waved from the living room but didn't get up. Dinner was awkward from the first bite. Janelle talked about the wedding venue and guest list like we hadn't skipped 2 meetings with the planner. Blake responded with one-word answers. I just kept sipping my wine. Halfway through the roast, Janelle turned to me and said, So, have you made a decision about the prenup? I froze. Blake's fork paused midair. I'm still thinking it through, I said carefully. Janelle nodded, then added, It would really give everyone peace of mind, Henera. I think when you marry into a family like ours, it's just wise to put boundaries in place. I smiled, but it wasn't a warm one. Funny, that's exactly why I drafted one of my own. Janelle's eyebrows lifted just slightly. Oh? Blake's jaw tightened. It's balanced, I said. Just like yours. Janelle's voice turned saccharine. I'm sure you understand, Mia. Blake has worked hard to maintain our family's reputation. We've had incidents in the past. I didn't ask what those were, but I didn't need to. I was starting to understand what kind of family this really was. Later that night, back in our apartment, Blake finally cracked. "I can't believe you brought that up at dinner," he said, tossing his keys into the bowl by the door. "She asked," I replied. "What did you want me to say?" "I wanted you to act like we're a team." "Are we?" I shot back. He turned to me, arms crossed. "What's that supposed to mean? You're asking me to sign away everything. Then you get pissed when I don't smile and go along with it." He paced for a second, then stopped. "You know what? My ex never questioned it." I stared at him. "Your ex-fiancé?" He flinched slightly, but didn't deny it. I hadn't asked much about her before, just that they dated, got engaged quickly, and ended things even quicker. He always said it was mutual. Now I wasn't so sure. "She signed a prenup too?" I asked. He hesitated. "Yeah." "And?" "She left before the wedding, said she didn't feel heard." I gave a small, humorless laugh. "No kidding." He looked away. "I thought you were different," he muttered. "I am different," I said, "because I'm not afraid to stand up for myself." The next day, I reached out to a woman named Erin, who Carmen remembered from a real estate conference. She had once been engaged to Blake's old friend, and rumor was she knew what happened with the ex. Erin didn't hesitate. "Oh, her," she said when I asked. "What happened?" I asked. "Please. I need to know." She got pushed out of everything: wedding planning, financial decisions, even her own apartment lease. Blake and his mom basically managed every detail of their relationship by the end. He'd tell her it was for efficiency, but it was all about control. I felt sick. "She said signing that prenup was the worst mistake of her life," Erin added. That night, I sat on the edge of my bed and stared at my phone. The wedding was 8 weeks away. Invites had gone out. Deposits were paid. But for the first time, I saw what the future might really look like. And it terrified me. Because it wasn't just about paperwork. It was about control. About silence. About always having to ask permission just to protect what's mine. Blake came home late again. He tossed his briefcase down and looked at me like nothing had happened. "Want to order in?" he asked. I shook my head. "I'm not hungry." He shrugged and walked to the kitchen. I watched him open the fridge. Like this was normal. Like nothing had changed. And maybe for him, it hadn't. But for me, everything had. For the next 2 weeks, Blake acted like everything was fine. He sent texts about cake tastings and table linens. He even joked with my cousin at brunch like he hadn't iced me out for days. But it was all surface level. There was a new rhythm between us, and it wasn't love. It was tension wearing a tuxedo. I stopped bringing up the prenup, and Blake never asked about mine again. But that didn't mean I forgot it. I started looking at our relationship like a case file. There were things I'd brushed off before, like how Blake always insisted on paying for everything, even if I offered to split. How he made financial decisions without me, even when it affected our shared accounts. How he always dismissed questions with, "It's handled," and never explained what it was. I used to think he was just being efficient. Now I saw it for what it was: control. So I started digging. It started with the apartment lease. When we moved in together 2 years ago, I assumed we both signed. I remembered filling out forms and scanning IDs. But when I called the property manager, I learned something else. "Only one leaseholder listed," the woman said. "Blake Spencer." My name wasn't on the lease. At all. But I submitted paperwork, I said, confused. She hesitated. "He asked us to keep it under one name for simplicity." I hung up, hand shaking. It was just like Erin said. He liked control. Quiet control. And suddenly I couldn't remember a single thing in our life that didn't have his name on it. I called Carmen. "I think I need to get out," I said. "You sure?" she asked. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. "I don't think this is just about the prenup anymore." It never was. I told her about the lease. She swore under her breath. "Come stay with me. Just for a while. You need space to think." So I packed a suitcase while Blake was at work. I left a note on the kitchen counter that said, "I need time." And I walked out. Living with Carmen felt like waking up after a bad dream. She had a tiny guest room with pink walls and a twin bed, but it felt more like home than the 2-bedroom Blake and I shared for years. She made coffee in the mornings. She let me vent without giving advice unless I asked. She let me exist without asking for anything in return. I started making a list of things Blake had handled without me. Lease utilities, joint bank account. I found out I wasn't a co-owner, just an authorized user. The wedding planner contract, signed only by him. And finally, The venue. I called the venue pretending to be my own assistant. Hi, I'm calling on behalf of Mia Henderson. I just wanted to confirm who's listed as the booking contact for the Henderson-Spencer wedding. The woman on the phone was cheerful. Oh yes, that would be Blake Spencer. He paid the deposit and signed the contract. Lovely guy. Is Mia listed anywhere? I asked. There was a pause. Actually, no, just Blake. Of course. Carmen and I sat in her kitchen that night with wine and Chinese takeout, staring at my growing list of red flags. This is a pattern, she said. He isolates, controls, then acts like it's normal. I nodded slowly. You think he did this to his ex too? Carmen shrugged. I don't care. He's doing it to you. That's when I made my decision. I was going to cancel the wedding. But I wasn't going to do it quietly. Blake showed up at Carmen's place 3 days later. I was in my pajamas when I heard the knock. Mia, we need to talk, he said through the door. Carmen stood beside me. You want me to stay? I'll be fine, I said. I stepped outside and shut the door behind me. Blake looked tired. Dark circles under his eyes, wrinkled shirt, but he still carried that posture, shoulders square, chin high, like he was always 2 steps ahead. I didn't come here to fight, he said. Okay. I want to understand. Why'd you leave like that? I looked at him for a long moment. Blake, do you realize I'm not on the lease? He blinked. What? I called the building. I'm not on anything. Not the lease, not the bills, not even the mail. He ran a hand through his hair. I didn't mean to. You did. You wanted everything under your name. You never included me in anything. Not really. He didn't deny it. I thought I was protecting us, he said. No, I replied. You were protecting yourself. You just didn't expect me to notice. He tried to spin it. Said he was raised to handle finances on his own. Said his parents modeled it that way. Said he didn't mean to make me feel shut out. I just like to know things are secure, he said. It's not about control. But it was, because security doesn't come from secrecy, and I wasn't buying it anymore. I'm canceling the wedding, I said quietly. His eyes widened. You don't mean that. I do. What about the deposits? The guests? Our families? They'll survive. He shook his head. You're overreacting? No, I said. I'm finally reacting the way I should have months ago. He didn't yell. He didn't argue. He just walked away. And I knew in that moment that it was over. The fallout came fast. Blake's parents were furious. Janelle called me a manipulator. Doug didn't say much, but I got the sense he agreed with her. They tried to guilt me into changing my mind. Offered to rework the agreement if that was the problem. But the prenup wasn't the problem. It was the symbol of everything wrong between us. The wedding planner canceled without much fuss. She'd seen it before. You'd be surprised how many brides back out for the right reasons, she told me on the phone. The hardest part is knowing it's okay to change your mind. She refunded what she could. I gave the dress back to the boutique, even though it was non-refundable. It's just a dress, I said. Not a future. Carmen took me to Banff the weekend the wedding was supposed to happen. We hiked, drank overpriced hot chocolate, and watched couples get their photos taken on frozen lakes. And I didn't cry. Not once. Because I wasn't mourning love. I was celebrating clarity. The Monday after the canceled wedding, I walked into work expecting awkward stares. But it was mostly normal. A few coworkers asked if I was okay. My manager told me I could take more time if I needed it. I just smiled and said, I'm good. Because I was. Not perfect. Not healed. But good. Good in a way that felt earned. Carmen made me a just divorced from nothing cake. Chocolate, of course. She stuck a single candle in the middle. You didn't marry him, she said, handing me a fork. That counts as a celebration. I laughed. Genuinely. It was the first time in weeks I felt like I could breathe without thinking of Blake. The news spread fast through Blake's circle. His college friends reached out, some curious, some nosy. One of them, Tyler, texted me a single line, "You were smart to leave." I didn't reply, but I screenshotted it. Another message came from Erin, the ex-fiancé's friend I had talked to before. She wrote, I told her what you did. She said she wishes she'd had your courage. That one made me cry. Blake didn't reach out again. No apology, no closure, just silence. But one afternoon I got an email from his mom, Janelle. Subject, final words. It read, Mia, I hope someday you understand what a stable life requires. Blake had every intention of taking care of you. Not everyone wants a partner who pushes back. You could have had a good life. I didn't respond, but I drafted a reply in my notes app. Janelle, I hope someday you understand that love isn't about ownership. Blake didn't want a wife. He wanted an assistant. Not everyone wants to be managed. I could have had a quiet life, but I chose a peaceful one. I never hit send, but writing it was enough. A few weeks later, I booked an appointment with a financial advisor. Carmen went with me. We sat in this downtown office with big windows and a little coffee machine that made cappuccinos with real foam. I want to set up my own investment account, I said. Start from scratch. No joint anything. The advisor, her name was Grace, smiled. Great, she said. We'll build something that's yours and only yours. That same week, I applied for a part-time evening course in business law, not because I wanted to be a lawyer, but because I never wanted to be blindsided again. I started researching cohabitation agreements, legal rights for common law relationships, even real estate loopholes. It was like putting armor on after walking barefoot for years, and honestly, it felt amazing. One night, a few months later, Carmen and I were at a wine bar when she asked something I hadn't thought about in a while. Do you think you'll date again? I shrugged. Eventually. Any interest now? I smiled. Not really. I like myself too much right now. She laughed and clinked her glass against mine. To me, a 2, 0. Around the 6-month mark, Blake's name popped up in my inbox. Subject: no hard feelings? I stared at it for a long time before opening it. Mia, I know things ended badly. I just wanted to say I'm sorry for how I handled things. You didn't deserve to feel like a second-class partner. I've been doing a lot of thinking. I hope you're well. No request to talk, no blame, just an email. Carmen told me to delete it, but I didn't. I archived it, not to reread, but to remember. Not every story needs a confrontation. Some just need a period. A few more months passed, and I started looking for a new place. Not because Carmen was pushing me out, she would have let me stay forever, but because I was ready. I found a small condo in a quiet neighborhood near the Bow River. Nothing fancy, but full of light and facing west, so the sunsets looked like watercolor paintings every evening. And this time, the lease had my name at the top. On my move-in day, Carmen brought champagne and snacks. We sat on the floor eating crackers with cream cheese because the couch hadn't arrived yet. I like it, she said. It's very you. I looked around at the bare walls and empty shelves. It's a work in progress, I said. Yeah, she said, but a damn good one. Some nights I still thought about Blake. Not with longing, but with clarity. He taught me what manipulation looks like when it's disguised as care. He taught me what it feels like to be slowly erased from your own life. But he also taught me how to notice the warning signs, how to trust my gut, how to choose myself when it would have been easier not to. So no, I don't hate him. But I'll never miss him. Not for a second. People ask me sometimes if I regret canceling the wedding. I don't. Regret is what you feel when you gave up too soon. What I feel is relief. Relief that I saw the truth in time. Relief that I walked away before I became another version of myself I wouldn't recognize. And more than anything, I feel proud. Because when it came down to it, I didn't lose a fiancé. He lost a future with me. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed, please like, share, and subscribe for more content. If you want to share your stories, please comment below. Additionally, what is your opinion on the poster's decision?